All right, I'm ready. Hey, get on in here. Hello, Simone. How are you?
Hi, Charlie. How are
It's
you
great to
today?
finally get to meet you. I've heard so much about you, and then I saw one of your shows. I was like, "Oh, this woman's fantastic," and you're cute as heck. In your
Oh, well,
video,
thank
you really
you.
never even go on camera. I never even saw your face. This is the first time I even knew what you look like.
Well, a lot of times I don't go on camera, A, because I'm recording from various different places. And B, when I first started putting out a little content, it was quite controversial. I'm a woman who lives in the mountains by myself. I just wasn't sure if I really wanted to be out there on camera. But just in the last few years, most of the things that I talk about have become public. They were mainstream. They weren't mainstream before, but today they are. So you can openly talk about people and people don't start rolling their eyes at you. And what I said to a few friends who finally started calling me back after a year, and they're like, wow, what you said happened. And I said, well, I told you I read the legal documents in the court
Mhm.
cases, but you
Mhm.
accused me of lying about that. So why are you calling me today?
Yeah, exactly.
And then there
It
were other
like
people
irrelevant.
that
I may forgive, but I'm not going to forget.
You're right. Well, in when people do come to you and their eyes have been opened, you have to understand that they've had 50 years of programming. All
Yeah.
you did was introduce a few little ideas into their head, and the people who actually are critical thinkers went to look it up, and they'd come back to me with more information than I'd given them. So I didn't go online a lot for that reason, and also like looking like a typical California girl from Newport Beach, and I thought that might also bias people. I just want them to receive the information. It's not political information, although some people will see it as a political jibe at the person they like, and it's not that at all. It is just telling you the information and letting you make your own decision. That's my thing.
That tells
Read
me everything I
everything
need
you
to
want.
know. That tells me everything I need to know about your strength of character right out of the gate. I'm
Thank
serious,
you.
completely
Thank you.
serious. Um, the thing that I wanted to talk to you about was what you did in your show, and you opened me up to a lot of things. I mean, I've heard it, and you're right about the conspiracy theory thing. I've been in the media my entire adult life, radio and television. I was one of those eye rollers. Oh, another
Yes.
conspiracy theory. Oh boy. But I've learned very quickly, finally, and it was all COVID that really brought it all. When somebody says it's a conspiracy theory, 6 months later, it's usually fact. It was
Well,
right.
and I'm sure you've heard the conspiracy theory comes from the CIA when George Bush Sr. was head of the CIA, and
Right.
he wanted to
It was a way
discredit
to
the people
discredit. Yes.
who didn't believe the Warren Commission. And as it turns out, throughout history, most of the people on the Warren Commission are responsible for killing Kennedy. So, and we still don't know what happened. And but according
Yeah, but we do have a pretty dang good idea of why it happened, and we've had all the theories about it was the mafia, and he ticked off the unions, and that's why Robert Kennedy got murdered, and because he was going after them, and but with John F., I really believe that it had everything to do with him saying this whole world monetization system that we've got going on, we got to get out of that.
Well, and if you listen to his nephew, right, who I assume has an inside scoop, he was actually taken out by the Israeli government, who also control the Federal Reserve, not the regular Israeli good people, God fearing people. But like all countries, like all even organized religions, we have bad people in our, and it was, they had illegally stolen our nuclear secrets. Then they built a nuclear plant and Kennedy told him to shut it down. So, according to it is linked to the Federal Reserve System, as we'll talk about later today. But according to the family members, it was a direct counteraction to the fact that he told them to shut their nuclear facilities down. So
So
you
much
can
of
go on and see his interviews.
So
He's
much of
got
what
pretty
we have now seems to be controlled and owned and operated directly from England, specifically London and the Vatican.
right. And so that's my kind of background. I enjoy exploring the structures that control our lives. And if you have to follow the money. So, and unless you understand the Federal Reserve System, you're not going to understand the Depression, the war, the removal from the gold standard, why they're pushing for wars all over the world today. And so the Federal Reserve is a private bank owned by private bankers. It's not federal and it's not a reserve.
The
So
name is
this
very, very deceptive. And you're right, they don't reserve anything. It's like basically transferring ownership, but nothing to back it up.
Well, right. They issue a fiat currency that's backed by nothing. Originally, you have to kind of go back. The United States has had 3 bankruptcies. Okay. First, after the the Revolutionary War, which my family fought in the first in Connecticut, but then he was a lieutenant colonel fighting the French and the Indians. A lot of people don't understand we weren't just fighting the British during the Revolutionary War. No. There has been 3 bankruptcies since that time. Because the King of England ruled the world at the time, he had control of all of the shipping lanes, of all of the City of London has always, in our lifetime anyway, since became a Roman, the City of London is not part of England. It's a Roman enclave. It's owned and controlled by the Vatican. And anyone who works in the City of London knows this. You can pass right under the gates. It's got the Knights Templar cross right on it. And people who live in the system understand that it's not part of England. So we've had 3 bankruptcies since the beginning of the United States, the Civil War, which was caused to put us into bankruptcy, when the government forcibly went around and confiscated all the silver and gold that people have left, claiming it was counterfeit. In turn, they gave them paper money, and they promised that if they went to the bank, they would be able to withdraw their gold. Then we roll over into the crash. The boom.
Yeah, you're right. That paper dollar is a promissory note, right?
It's a promissory note, and it's a loan. It doesn't even belong to us. Actually, it belongs to the bank. So even when we think we have money, we don't have money. So after the Civil War, they forced us to take this paper currency, and they stole all of our gold and silver and other assets. So we get to the crash of 1929, funded in 1914, they put in the Federal Reserve banking system by blackmailing all of our politicians, by a bunch of illegal acts. You can read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And that's a pretty extensive book. It's quite thick, but it does tell you and explains to you exactly how the Federal Reserve was put in place. It gives you the history. Jekyll Island, according to the Spanish sailors who came from Spain after when they were first exploring the United States and there wasn't a lot of people here, Jekyll Island, I don't know if you're aware that giants used to exist on the earth. There's one on Catalina Island you can go see in the museum. I live in a mining region. They found skeletal remains of giants all over Northern California.
Well, this goes back to the Noah's Day when fallen angels were jacking up human women and having these super kids. Nephilim, is that what they're called?
Yeah, the Nephilim. But basically, they destroyed everything. They ate everything, right? And then they ended up eating themselves. But when you hear the different people in the world always worried about conserving the assets of the world, a lot of those people that are in those power positions believe themselves to be the descendants of the Nephilim, and they're worried about destroying the world again. That's why they're so interested in population control, because anytime there's too many people, then they get a problem. Like I live in Northern California. The Hopi Indians have the story of how the Edomites, right, killed all of the giants, over 1,200 that lived here in the Sierra Mountains. So you can just dig into any of these stories all over the world. They've been suppressing through the Smithsonian Museum all of the real skeletons and everything. But with the internet, people have found all this. So Jekyll Island was one of the last remaining places where the Spanish explorers on numerous occasions have records of witnessing giants there who were eating humans. So this stuff goes way back. And this is where over this old camp where all these giants are supposedly buried is where the Rothschilds have their resort, right over the old temple and all over all of that stuff. So Jekyll Island is a whole story in itself.
Wow.
You can go.
Again, I've just recently learned something I didn't know before. I'm not going to just say, okay, it's all true just because Simone Anderson said it, but interesting.
Well, a lot
So
of you can go to The Creature from Jekyll Island, you can read the book. And what a lot of people like, I do a lot of stuff about the Rothschilds, how they overthrew China, financed Mao, brought communism around the world. And people, once they look it up, they're like, you can go to the Rothschilds website and they say they did it. So I don't know how to argue with people anymore when they refuse to see. And this
yeah,
is a well documented book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's been around for a long time. A lot of people have read it. They just haven't understood the full capacity. So that was the civil. Okay, so we had the Civil War where they took all of our gold. We had the implementation of the Federal Reserve private bank owned by the City of London, which is owned by the Vatican. So basically, when we had the Depression, we were bankrupt. They didn't have anything left to pledge. So our government pledged our birth certificates. And this is the old Roman system that they've used throughout history. This is why Rome didn't fall for so long,
this
because they
gets into
owned
the whole
everyone's.
change. This gets into the whole change of, I'm sorry for interrupting, but the whole
Sure.
change with the birth certificates where suddenly our names are always in capital letters, right? Because it's a
Yes,
corporate
because in
thing,
capital letters
corporation.
and right. Capital letters mean you're invisible. They're not seen by the legal. It's also why in 1999 they stopped teaching cursive in school, because cursive is the language of the dead, of the cursed. And as I explained, the Admiralty law system, we are the
That's
cursed.
where the name cursive comes from.
Yes, we're the cursed.
I never knew
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Most people don't, but like again, I have a odd way of trying to look into things and figuring out why things work the way they do.
Yeah,
Words have meaning. But a
and
lot of people
power,
don't realize Vatican
which
means
is
the
why the
serpent's
left always
out.
tries to change the language. By the way,
That's right.
they're
And
always
they
trying to
have,
get you to call things differently from what it actually is. You're no longer a
well,
homosexual. You're gay. You're no longer a gay woman. You're lesbian, so you can be set apart. But they get you to change the language. Now you can't even call him the Pope, who I'm not a fan of. Just recently got reprimanded because he, in an off-camera conversation, a private conversation, called the LGBTQ folks homosexual, and that was some kind of a slur against the LGBTQ community. I won't use you don't get to dictate the English language to me, you clowns. So they have tremendous importance, which is why they try and change words all the time and make us call something different other than what it really is. The cursive thing, what do you mean we're of the curse? What does that mean? Did I lose you? Oh, you're frozen? Oh, shoot. Susan, if you could, Simone, if you can still hear me, um, why don't you go ahead and log off and come back in, and we'll see if that does it. I'll put you back in, put you back on, but go ahead and close out and then come back on. Or you know what? I'll just do it for you. I don't know what happened. Oh, shoot. You know what? This is a good opportunity. We'll get more into that right after I tell you about a way to buy more American made products, all naturally derived, no chemicals. They're like me, they love it. I've put enough chemicals in my body when I lived like a rock star. I don't need any more. So I'm all about natural whenever possible. And the best way to do that is freedomswitchusa.com/Lee. freedomswitchusa.com/LEE. Join me buying American made products from this family owned and operated company out of Idaho Falls, Idaho. They also have factories where they're making their own products in Tennessee and Missouri, and it's all United States of American made. My fellow Americans making these products, and they've got them for sale, over 400 of them. Everything from supplements, skin care, hair care, body care, home care, laundry detergent, bath soap, deodorant, anything you could think of is there in one place, and it's all online. Become a member. It's kind of like Costco, but it's an online store. So it's Costco meets Amazon. And what do you got to lose? My friend Ron Lyons has a short video there you can watch. So just go there. He'll explain everything. And if you're on board, buy American made products, support American made products, fire the big box stores. I have. I don't go to Walmart anymore. No CVS pharmacy, which by the way, the majority stockholder of CVS, George Soros. No more Target ever. I don't go there and I don't need them. I'm getting everything online and I love it at freedomswitchusa.com/Lee. freedomswitchusa.com/LEE. I was hoping Susan would be on, or I keep calling her Susan. You know why? I know Susan Anderson. She's a friend of mine. Simone Anderson. Let me call her right now because we're live. So it makes it a little tough for me to. I can fill time, but not that well. Let me see if I can get her to answer.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey.
I'm having trouble with the internet. I'm going over to Office Depot across the street now. For some reason, it's not connecting right now.
Okay, because we're live. We're live right now on my Rumble channel.
Okay. So can you just take? I'm literally pulling to another station. I don't know why my system isn't working. I bought a Verizon. So if you could just do like 2 more seconds, and I'll be over there.
I will. We'll wait for you. I'm not going anywhere. Okay. See you soon. She's fantastic. I'm really glad that I met her, and thank you, Agenda 21 Radio, and thank you, Tiffany Anderson. Thank you, Paul Preston, for letting me know about her because she's wonderful. And we'll definitely have her on again. But right now, I wanted her to explain the Federal Reserve System. What is that? It's a mystery to us. Most of us, I was one of them, thought that was because it's called Federal Reserve. I thought it was a government entity. I thought it was the United States of America bank that kind of oversees money and the economy and everything else. And they do oversee money and the economy, but it's not the United States of America. It's not a government agency. And we have no control over it. And that's why people through the years who have said, we got to get out of this. We got to get back to some kind of a gold standard. We got to get back to look at what's happening with what is it? BRICS, which is Brazil. Good heavens. I don't remember all the countries, but they've come together and they're like, we're going to start our own currency and we're going to do our own thing. And it's going to be actually silver based or backed, I think, with silver. There might be gold as well. I don't know a lot about it, but hopefully Simone will. But that's the future. And unfortunately, these other countries did it before we could. Because every time somebody around here has actually made the suggestion that we need to get out of that, they wind up Hillaried. They wind up Clintoned. They wind up Epsteined, including John F. Kennedy. There's very real, solid evidence that that's why he was taken out. And here we have my president, Donald Trump. Lord willing, we get to see this sequel, regardless of what these crooked courts are doing. He's saying the same thing. So pray for his safety. Pray for the safety and the preservation of his life. How do you put a former president into prison? What's going to happen with the Secret Service? How will he be protected? How come my own Republican Party is not stepping up and screaming about this? Why am I not hearing any congressmen or senators, congresspeople or senators causing an uproar over this? How come Biden's still walking around and he hasn't been impeached? How come Mayorkas, who was impeached, is still holding that very powerful seat? What the hell's going on with my own fellow Republicans? I'm sick of them. One thing I keep hearing is, it's just there's the left wing and there's the right wing, but they're both flying the same bird in a very bad direction. So, if you don't mind waiting with me just a little bit longer. And we'll get Simone on and we'll finish this conversation because it's an extremely important one, very vital one. I got a little time. I got another guest coming up at 1:30, but we got time. Rumble, by the way, rumble.com. Thank God for them. Thank you, Lord. Seriously. Because otherwise, many of us would not even have a platform now. I've been taken off YouTube again. Many of us have who won't bow to them amending our language, our English language, because I come right out and say things like COVID-19 is not a vaccine. It's another flu shot. It was manufactured and created in a lab, just like what we're seeing now over and over and over again. Fauci just finally admitted that the whole thing with the mask and the standing 6 feet apart was not based on any kind of science. And in the beginning, everyone seems to forget, oh, that's because the media doesn't show it. Fauci, in the beginning, said, hey, don't wear masks. They don't work. It's not going to work against a virus. That's silly. Unless it maybe makes you feel better and then go head on, but it's not going to help you. Fauci said that on camera during an interview. Why aren't we running that over and over and over again in the media? There's things too like that now that if you try and find them, good luck. They've already been scrubbed off YouTube. A lot of that stuff is gone. I try and save it when I can. But I was actually watching that interview when he said that. There's been a massive deception. And I can't talk about things like that without getting kicked off YouTube, without getting kicked off Facebook, Instagram. Forget about it. Instagram owned by Facebook, YouTube owned by Google. This is crazy what's happening. But the craziest part of it is all the people afraid to speak out against it, because they don't want to be censored. They don't want to be taken down because they're making a really good living doing their little YouTube videos while being conservative and using their little code words that we all know what they're saying, but at least they get to keep their show going. And I could do that. I could easily do that. It's easy to call it a jab instead of what it is. Easy to call it, some kind of code word instead of saying COVID. Easy to, instead of election fraud, calling it whatever. They have their little language. That you're supposed to follow that if you want to stay on YouTube. Screw YouTube. But YouTube's owned by Google. Don't ever forget that. And Google, by the way, I've said this on the air before for a lot of years now. You want to see what Google is really all about? Do a search engine on Google. Just do a search of Trump, great president. That's it. Trump, great president. You'll see 3-4 pages, and people rarely go past beyond the first page of nothing but trashing him, nothing but bad things. You'll get to the 4th or 5th page, maybe there'll be one positive story about Trump being a great president or a good president. Good president, Trump, good president, whatever. Just try it, experiment. And then if you have the wherewithal to actually switch your search engines and don't even have that on your platform anymore. Swiss Cows is a good one. I use them. They're out of Switzerland. Swiss, SWISS, cows, COWS.com. That's a search engine that just whatever you put it, but you're going to get stuff from all over the world on there. And Brave, I like brave.com. I've been using them and utilizing them. Everyone's talking about duckduckgo.com because they don't track what you search, allegedly. But if you use DuckDuckGo, I challenge you to do that same thing. Trump, good president. Just search engine on DuckDuckGo and see what happens. 2-3 pages of negative, and then finally something good. Am I just using Google there and they just put the DuckDuckGo name in front of it? So I don't know what's happening with Simone Anderson now. I don't want to keep you on all this time if I'm. Let me bring this up. Maybe bring this up, something that you might enjoy. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for her, something I found on the internet. On the internets. Here we go. I like this one.
We take that same chemical weapon that's an acute toxic flammable environmental hazard, and we ship it to compound pharmacies that put it in supplements and protein powders and energy drinks that you drink. Right? You ever heard of a Celsius energy drink? Celsius energy drink has 4 times the amount of daily cyanide that a human being is meant to ingest.
Wow.
4 times. That's just one sample.
Wow.
So drink Monster or Bang. I mean, drink Bang, not Monster or Celsius, right? Bang has methylcobalamin. This has cyanocobalamin. So, and we wonder what, we're putting these toxic chemicals. He says, where we get the hydrogen cyanide? Don't make me take you to that website because you'll just get up and leave. Do you know where we would get hydrogen cyanide? Because these facilities that actually compound this B12, they don't even pay for the hydrogen cyanide. You know where they get it?
Wow.
Human sewage treatment plants.
What?
It is the waste from a human sewage treatment plant. It's called sludge. It's foamy yellow sludge. They scrape it off the top, they dry it, turn it into a powder, ship it to a facility, synthesize it with a metal, and put it in your vitamins. They take metal, hydrogen cyanide, and put it in our supplements. So that's exactly, so when you get home tonight, I want you to take all of your supplements and protein powders, spin them around, look for that word cyanocobalamin, and if it has it, throw it in the trash, right? And do that for your kids too.
See why I've been encouraging you to buy American-made products from naturally derived ingredients, not chemicals, and certainly nothing that's skimmed off of a human sewage treatment plant. freedomswitchusa.com/Lee. freedomswitchusa.com/Lee. We've been poisoned by corporations all our lives. This is a way you can get away from that. Just let me tell you just about the laundry detergent that they have, that they make themselves. Natural ingredients, naturally derived, no chemicals. It comes out, you know how most of the cups are about that big that you pour. I'm talking about liquid laundry detergent. You pour in up to, one load, dirtiest load, pour it, fill it up, dump it in. Their cup is about that size. That's it. And you fill it up, not even halfway, and it's clear. It's clear liquid. And it's not all goopy either. Pour that in. I've never had better success with laundry detergent. And they make it themselves. So go to freedomswitchusa.com/Lee and see what I'm talking about. Watch that little video from Ron Lyons explaining everything, how it works. Become a member, buy the product, or do like I do. Actually sell it. It's up to you. You could make some money. It could actually be a significant income for you. I'm so grateful that I was introduced to it by my friend Heidi Hall. freedomswitchusa.com/Lee. freedomswitchusa.com/LEE. All right, let's get back to it. Simone Anderson. So the Federal Reserve is not the federal government, and certainly not the United States of America. They're their own separate entity, and everyone thinks it's the Reserve. You just assume because of the name Reserve, it's a bank, something that that controls huge, vast amounts of money. No, it's all a shell game and a Ponzi scheme, basically, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. Our founding fathers were opposed to this system. This is what had enslaved Europe under the feudal system after the Roman Empire fell. So this system has been used by the Romans. They basically go in. Usury was illegal in Europe until a certain group of people came from the eastern part of the world that were driven out of that area because of their practices. And they went to Germany and England. And over that time, they started lending money to the European rulers and ended up taking over their countries. The same thing that's happened to the United States. They basically use this what they call a fiat money currency system to take over the whole world. They basically just print money. The job of our politicians is to approve money for the bankers to issue. That's their job. That's why they're there. That's why they don't serve us, because like London, Washington, D.C. is not part of the United States. It's another Vatican-owned vassal. It was incorporated in Puerto Rico, where, if you may understand, the big pharma is also owned by the Vatican, and most of our pharmacy, and still a lot of it today before they shipped it all to our enemies to make our medicine, was in Puerto Rico.
We don't even make our own aspirin here, sister.
Well, right. But the reason they had the Federal Reserve in Puerto Rico, because it was also owned by the Vatican, the military industrial complex, the medical industrial complex is owned and controlled by the Vatican. On one of my shows, I can show you some charts and stuff. I do spend time going into the Vatican archives. And luckily, there's a lot of amazing researchers who are former Catholics who found out what was going on. And this isn't a discrimination against regular everyday Catholics, because they don't know this history either, right?
Most of us don't even know that Washington, D.C. is not actually part of the United States. Most of us don't even know that. I mean, they used to teach civics in high school and college. You used to be able to learn about our American system of government, but they've taken that out. Most of us have no clue that D.C. is not even part of the United States.
Right. And this occurred during the Civil War, where the country was divided. And the reason the bankers caused the Civil War is because the United States was the big shining blossom for the Industrial Revolution and everything. And people had gotten away from this power structure in Europe, and they were creating their own world here in the United States. Hence the British royal family and the German royal family and the French royal family, who were all owned and controlled by the Pope. In 1122, a document was signed at the Concordance of Worms that said if the monarchies ever went against the Pope, the papacy, that they would automatically lose their power. So by 1213, they had done this because the Vatican had clenched down on them so hard. So the Vatican declared itself the owner of every soul on the planet. In 1213, in 1215, we see the Magna Carta, which was the response to this declaration, and the rest is history. They've slowly taken over the world. A lot of people, I originally got into this because I was studying Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. I'd been watching them since the 90s, and I'd known a girl who got caught up in that. And I had been watching them. The reason that Jeffrey Epstein and them got brought down, because they're part of the military arm of the Vatican Jesuit system that keeps all of our politicians in line by using blackmail and extortion. So they're the enforcement arm of the Vatican system, Federal Reserve
Because they
system.
had gathered photographic and video evidence of these tremendously powerful people diddling kids.
And that's right. And not just whatever it was, whether it was they were gay or whatever it was. And even some people, Obama created a program where they could insert information into your computer and make it look like you were a child abuser. So we have to look back at some of these people who've been accused and taken down to see if they really did it. Because, of course, everyone's turned against, unless you're, unfortunately, it seems to be okay with a big percentage of the population. We have P. Diddy getting arrested. Justin Bieber came out and said he was raped. Will Smith's son says he was repeatedly raped by his own father and P. Diddy, right? All these children that are out there right now that have so many problems, and transgenderism, maybe not for everybody, but a lot of people who were severely sexually abused as child have a hard time. It's a mental disorder. So when you really look into it, and there's been like Law and Order plots, there's been movies with Bruce Willis based on this topic. It's not like this is something new. It's just kind of coming out. So the way all of this system has fallen into place is they're using the ancient Roman blackmail system that they used for a long time. And they have our birth certificates. So now in 1933, most people don't understand, the city of Washington, D.C. is a shrine of Satan. They've got the phallic symbol of the Washington Monument, the Oval Office. People miss that, but the Oval Office is directly in front of that, right? So basically, you'll see the same structures in Egypt. You'll see the same structures at the Vatican, right? Yeah. You can go to Mount Sinai, where the United Nations is headquartered. Not Mount Sinai, but Mount Hermon, where Satan fell, where they have their headquarters. You've got the same layout. And a lot of people believe that Abraham Lincoln was a big savior to the United States, but I've always wondered, and this is what kept me searching, why, if he was a savior to the United States, do they have a big picture of him and statue? Because Washington, D.C. was placed in 1933 when they had completely taken over our government. When they didn't have any more money, they took our birth certificates. So our birth certificates are kept in the Vatican Bank. We just get a slip of paper. That system collapsed in 1999 when our country went bankrupt, and our politicians did not tell us, because if I don't know, a lot of people always hear Rhodes Scholars. I think Steve Buttigieg
when Bill Clinton was still president. You said 99?
Right. So the Rhodes Scholarship was set up to educate world leaders on how to bring all of the former territories and areas controlled by the British Crown back.
I always thought it was interesting that Bill Clinton, they always bragged about Bill Clinton being a Rhodes Scholar. I'm like, he wasn't even a good student.
Well, because he didn't have to be a good student. He had to be someone willing to sell out everybody he knew, his own children, his own future. Look, in his own documentary, this is another big deception. In his own book, he used to say that he spent his life at Cornelius Rockefeller. He used to spend his summers there. Well, many people have gone back. He is strongly suspected of being the illegitimate son of Cornelius Rockefeller. Why would a poor guy who couldn't even afford shoes with a supposed alcoholic father spend his summers at that estate?
Right.
And his mother was a secretary in their office in Chicago. There's a lot of different. So, people do not come from nowhere when they're in these political, like they're always like, oh, Obama. Obama's stepfather, Santoro, was the 6th wealthiest man in the world at the time. He was an Indonesian, right? And many people don't understand that although we brought a lot of people here on Project Paperclip after the war, and the Russians brought a lot of the Nazi scientists, a lot of the elite Nazis went to Indonesia. Right? That's why we saw so much friction and craziness for them over the years. Really? So Barack Obama went through his initial years in college as Barry Santoro. He changed his name to Barack Obama, which means lightning bolt from heaven.
On this show, his name is Bathhouse Barry. Bathhouse Barry Obama.
Well, my sister used to work on the Hill for our congressman from Sonoma County in the 90s. And he was openly gay during that time. And so it's not any big secret.
Well, it is a big secret, though, to every single other American, it seems like, even though recently
people just don't want to see it.
They don't. Exactly.
They just don't want to see it because it disrupts everything. I noticed Michelle immediately. The first thing I ever said was, "That's a man."
That's a dude. Yeah, look at the shoulders, look at the hands.
Just like, I wasn't really into all this stuff so much. I had all the knowledge, but I didn't realize it was going to be useful. And I went over to some friends who were actually into the dark arts. I didn't realize this. I'd met them socially. As soon as I went to their house, I knew it was going to be the last time I ever went there. But they showed me the videos of Michelle Obama, because apparently in the transgender world, it's pretty open. They're just waiting to open it up to us. But it's pretty well known to the people in San Francisco. So that also surprised me. So I guess getting back to the Federal Reserve System, everything that we see happening in the world right now is related to the collapse of the financial system. Right now, the reason we've spent all this money, like supposedly we only have $20 trillion in circulation. Well, we owe 34, and there's another 17 million in credit card debt, and that doesn't include all the secret loans like our governor of California took from the Chinese illegally around the US government laws. So there's tons of debt out there. There's no way it can ever be remedied. They're going to have to do a debt jubilee. And that means collapsing the system and implementing a new system. So the system technically collapsed in 1999.
And
this is
if I may, notice a correlation. Anytime we've had a catastrophic world event, that's when you said 1914 was one of those when they made their dramatic change and shift. Start of the First World War.
Exactly.
I do believe that's why they're pushing so hard, including talk about making Ukraine a NATO nation, which Putin said, you do that, and that's it. I'm not going to let this happen. They're poking and prodding and trying to force us into World War frickin' III. They don't care about the loss of life, the massive loss of life. As a matter of fact, secretly, these horrible, horrific Freemason, whatever the hell they are, cabal, will celebrate the loss of millions of lives as long as it's not theirs, because they're all into this whole depopulation thing, so they can have their little Star Trek utopia. But they always couple it with some kind of catastrophic world event when they make these big changes. And I believe that's what they're waiting for.
They want to be the only lender, right? They want to control everything. When you understand, you don't even own your house. You are a beneficiary of the trust that owns the derivative of the derivative of the derivative of your house. That's why there's still 20,000 houses in the system just in Nevada, because they can't figure out who owns them, because they've been pieced off so many times. No one knows who owns them. So basically the bank has them now. So this is part of the long-term strategy for the banks to get everything. Like, a lot of people are super hot on Bitcoin. Do you know who owns a majority of the shares of Bitcoin? The Federal Reserve. And how did they get them? By confiscating them from other people.
Wow.
So just like they confiscated our silver and gold after the World War, or after the Civil War and during the Depression, and they promised us we could go to the bank and anytime we needed to get our gold, we could take it out. That's what caused the crash.
Let me go get it out of the vault. It's right back there. I'll be right back.
That's right. And that's what caused the crash. And that's what we've been living on since. We were on the international gold standard until the 70s when Nixon took us off it. And basically, Charlie, yours and I's entire life has been, that's why our wages have never gone up. And inflation has been massive. The same thing that used to cost $5 costs $5,000, whatever it is. Yeah. So our generation, like, a lot of people say, what can we do about this? It's so massive. What we can do is quit consenting to their insanity. They rule us under Roman law. If we don't consent, if we don't push back, we give them our consent. And this is what's been going on. And this is why people are just pushed to the maximum. And the reality is the Federal Reserve System is illegal bank. It's against the Constitution, just like the IRS is against the Constitution. We live under what they call Admiralty law. And this is super interesting. I think this is what they're trying to do in Hawaii. I can't get into why it's too much background for today. We could do a whole topic on that. But because the United States fell apart in 1999, anything acquired after the illegal Congress was put in place after the Civil War by Lincoln, they went out on a ship and passed the laws because it was a temporary Congress that wasn't supposed to make any permanent decisions. It was like a wartime thing. And that's also why they do it, because all laws are waived during wartime. So they get away with all this stuff, right? So that's why they want martial law, because under martial law, the Constitution is suspended. So these people have been working on this for a long time.
This is how they're going to postpone the election, by the way, in November.
Well, the reality is
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to come up with some way to declare martial law, and they're going to try and postpone the election because they're not quite ready to put all their crap they want to do in place. Because one thing you can count on with Democrats, they're not all that smart. And well,
you know what? It's the Republicans too. You couldn't work for 20 years in Congress and be a lawyer and not know what I'm telling you. It took me a week to find this out once I found out about it. Okay. Then I just went in to listen to all the documents. Like some people have been, I remember hearing about this kind of stuff in the 70s when I lived on the Russian River in Northern California, and the old guys would be talking. Yeah, maybe they were probably 40 or 50. I was young. But they would be talking about this stuff and about the bankruptcy of the United States. I've never been able to find it again, but you can see that in the late 1990s, a group of farmers and property owners got together and they sued the Federal Reserve Bank for trillions of dollars that had been stolen from the American people since the inception of the United States, and they won. And supposedly all that money was put in a bank in Europe, and they're supposedly been paying it out. That's why they need to get us in so much debt that it finally adds up to that note that there is some law somewhere. We're just not part of it, right? There is some laws and regulations that do control the world, and these people are also susceptible to that. But because we don't understand it, we can't fight back. So these bankers literally are now trying to put in the digital currency, which will be the same thing they've got in China. Like China is collapsing. China is not the superpower. They've robbed and enslaved an entire generation of people. And who brought communism to Russia and financed the overthrow of the oldest culture in the world? Who knew the real history of the world? The City of London bankers. Have you ever heard of the Opium Wars?
Wow.
How did a closed country that didn't allow trade find out about Bolshevikism and socialism from some German guys? Do you know that the guy, Karl Marx, was a Rothschild? Yeah.
Wow.
He was a Rothschild. His stuff was meant to bring, if you read his stuff, it's not even communism. His is through the struggle of the worker and the owner, right? But they wanted to cause these problems because if you notice, communism is always touted as socialism. But then when they
and it's the people rising up and going against the oppressive forces who are controlling them, the people. But it's quite the opposite. It's extremely deceptive. The entire government is nothing but control of the people, telling we're going to tell you what you're going to do, and we're going to take everything from you, and we're going to share it with everybody.
And if you notice, they were the Democratic Republic of China, the Democratic Republic of Russia, or Soviet Union, whatever. That was all the wording. But the reality was that the Russians weren't communists. They went to fight. The Bolsheviks stepped in and murdered everybody who came home from the war and took over Russia. Bolshevikism is another word for communism, right? It has, and these people have used, for instance, how did this same group of bankers know in 1914 that Israel was going to need a promised land because of all the atrocities that happened in World War II? How did they know that in 1914 and the early 1900s?
Yeah, all I've ever heard was it was 1948, but that's just when it was implemented.
No.
Only recently found out this goes back to the First World War.
Lord Balfour, who was put in charge of Israel. And if you go back to the Zionist movement, Zionism is a Bolshevik communist movement. It has nothing to do with the descendants of Shem, the son of Noah, who was the eventual great-grandfather of the people. I mean, it's well known in Israel. The guy who runs Israel has no Jewish blood whatsoever. He's Polish. He's a Khazarian. He has no blood relation to Shem. Like 99% of people who are in Israel, they converted and they were lured down there with all these promises from all these same bankers.
You're talking about Netanyahu?
Yeah, Netanyahu's not Jewish. Most of the people in Israel are not Jewish. Jewish means you're from the tribe of Judah, the city of Judah,
yeah.
where if you would have walked up, they did not call themselves Jews then. This was a terminology that they adapted during the Bolshevik, because everyone saw the Bolshevik movement was mainly led by these Eastern European Jewish people who claim to be Jews, but they're non-religious Jews. So that doesn't even make sense because they're not from Judah. They're Turks from the Caucasus. I learned this living in Turkey in my 20s. They call them the people who forsake God. They were thrown out by, this is their big problem with Russia, because the Russian czars drove them out of Khazaria in that area, and that's who's in the Ukraine causing the Nazi problem. In Georgia, in Turkey, in Russia, it was this group of criminal elites. Not even they were mostly, always preying on their own people the most, but it was this elite.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because you're suggesting that Khazarian is Nazism.
Well, okay.
Why would they be eradicating their own people? Why are they?
Because they're believing the Christians who actually they underwent a forced conversion because they were Baal worshipers. They were Phoenicians, sacrificing children, pedophilia, and one of their big things was people who were traveling through the Khazarian lands. They would kill them and take their identities. Have you ever seen the movie The Talented Mr. Ripley? With Vincent D'Onofrio, where he kills the people going to America and assumes their identity. That's a Khazarian story, right? So they were thrown out. You can go back. It's been removed from our history books because the people who the Rothschilds descend from are that group. So they, in the early 1900s, they removed all this, just like they removed all the real healthcare from our healthcare books to implement. A lot of people don't realize that prohibition, they think it's about alcohol. Well, marijuana was used in everything, including the holy anointing oil in the Bible throughout history as an anti-inflammatory, as a pain medication. They made illegal marijuana also. And what was born after the Depression was Big Pharma out of Puerto Rico, which is not part of the United States because it's a Vatican stronghold, where they incorporated the first DC illegal government, right? And so you can see that there's people who've sued. The Federal Reserve is illegal. The IRS is its military arm that has spent the last 100 years since it was put in place seizing all the assets.
And that income tax goes directly against our U.S. Constitution too, by the way.
Yes, it does. And where is our income tax going right now? And where is most of the money we're giving the Ukraine?
How has they been getting away with this for so long?
It's because they're
only
the
getting
banker.
away with it, but it's increasing. It's getting worse and bigger. 87,000 new IRS agents armed, by the way.
So you're
These
asking,
agents are armed.
Oh yeah, of course. They've always been armed, but that's why, because it's by force. And they know that's why they just ordered so many new agents, because they're trying to grab as much as they can before the system collapses, because the Federal Reserve will still be the owner of a lot of this stuff when the system collapses. So you were asking how the Nazi movement is related to the Federal Reserve and why would same Jewish people. You have to go back to 1666, where one of the followers, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Sabbateans, right? Zebi Zabbatia. He himself declared himself to be the Jewish Messiah, right? And he believed the way to God was through debauchery, incest, all the abominations. He said that was the true calling to God. So there was 2 million Jewish people living in Europe at this time, and 1 million of them converted with him. This is why we see a lot of the stuff still today in Hollywood and that, right? And so he had a follower named Frank, right, who considered himself to be the reincarnation of Zebi Zabbatia, and again, the savior of the Jewish people. The Jewish people had their savior. Well, let's not get into that. That's a convoluted thing. But Frank, right, after all the atrocities, after all the terrible stuff, the stuff they did to children, the head of the Ottoman Empire said he was going to be put to death. But most likely they had blackmail material on the Ottoman Empire guy, because he's like, oh, you've committed all these crimes and murdered all these people, but we're just going to let you go if you convert to the Muslim faith, right? So he converted to the Muslim faith, and a lot of those same people in that same leadership, they were given the option to convert. So they converted to Judaism, right? But they still secretly practice the Baal. That's why when you openly talk to people like George Soros and people who are descendant from this group, they don't believe in God. So why are they calling themselves Jews, right? They don't descend from Judah, and they weren't Eastern European Turks. So this is where it gets convoluted. So the founder of the Illuminati is Frank, Nathan Rothschild, and the other guy that's always, who's the other guy that's always given the one, Simon Weishaupt. Those are the three founders of the Illuminati. So this mission, and it's not anti-Semitic. I'm not anti-Shemitic, because the people I'm talking about have no relation to Noah's son Shem, the father of the Israelites and the Hebrews, right? So they have taken, and that's why they formed, like, the term anti-Semitic should be anti-Shemitic, and that would really refer to all the groups of the Persians down there. The Bible is full of
doesn't Semitic mean of Arab descent?
Well, it means that you're Shemitic. It means you're from the tribe of Shem. It's Shemitic. Okay. Semitic is a term made up by the Bolsheviks in the 1800s when they were trying to, and you can go to their own documents. This is not my opinion. Go to the Zionist documents. Before they took over Jerusalem, they tried to go to Uganda, and they called it the Uganda Project, and they were denied. And they openly talk about creating their own homeland, that they would rule the world through the banking system from that. It's not the people that we know, our friends, our co-workers. It's not them. It's the same way we here in the Christian religion have people like Joel Osteen, right? And they're not preaching the gospel. And you were saying, so these people converted. That's where the anti-Shemitic thing came from, because after this tribe scattered, where did they go? That's the homes of the Greeks and the Turks. Those are the descendants, right, of the Greeks and the Turks and the Romans and the Germans. They were the Shemites. Those were the ones that were killed by the false tribe, the 13th tribe, the synagogue of Satan. And that's who we're fighting against today. And like they call them, it's not Nazi, it's Nazi. Ashkenazi, the sons of Ashkenaz, the sons of Ashkenaz, the son of Noah, Nazi. Another thing they did, because other people knew that after the war. So instead, they created the anti-Semitic, and you hear on Fox and on CNN, anti-Semitic. That basically means you're anti-communist, you're anti-Bolshevik. Yes, we are. We're not anti-Shemitic. We're not anti-Shemitic.
No.
Right? We're not against the children of Shem, which there are none in Israel. Like over 97% of people in Israel do not have any descendant relationship. But again, they've also been fooled. And the ones that didn't convert and followed true Judaism after they underwent forcible conversion by the leader of the Ukraine, by the leader of the Roman Empire, by the Turkish Ottoman Empire, they underwent forced conversion because they were worshipers of Baal. And that's why we see all this stuff surfacing in our mainstream today, because those people have just been living underground and creating a reality that has nothing to do with the reality that we really see. So and right now, that banking system, I'm not the only person who could look this up. I'm not the only person who ever went to Switzerland and worked in Switzerland and said, this just doesn't make sense. Why is all the money here? Why don't they ever get invaded during the wars? It's a beautiful, rich country. Because who guards the Vatican? In the Bible, it tells you, Jesus tells you where Satan resides. Where is it? Switzerland.
What do you mean?
In the Bible, Jesus says where Satan resides. And if you look it up on a map today, it's modern day Switzerland. Switzerland is a papal-owned state, right? They're mercenaries. Like in Europe, like they're not well liked by any of the other Europeans because they were always the mercenaries that were hired to go out and do things to people that lived around the Swiss area. So, so all of the things that were taught, I mean, I studied, listen, the reason I know this is because I spent a lot of time in like, go talk to a guy who's in a Hasidic outfit. maybe if you run into someone that you happen to know, or you have a friend who has a Hasidic friend who's willing to talk to you, and they talk about Judaism and what it is to be a Jew. And they believe like this whole thing where they're creating a new world order, that one God will rule over and all that. The actual Jews, the people actually practicing Judaism based on the Hebrew faith, believe they are still in exile for the way they lived 1,000 years ago. They're still waiting for their Messiah. You wouldn't find one Israeli flag, because the people there have absolutely nothing to do with the people that they convinced to come down to Israel, promising them. I think a few years ago, I looked it up, we're giving each Israeli citizen $36,000 a person. We're not just doing the Ukraine. We didn't just do Germany after World War II. We didn't do all that. But because the system went bankrupt in 1999, we've been led by illegal pirates. That's why they love to make movies about pirates. We have Pirate Day. They're the pirates. We're living under Admiralty law. So they rule us under the law of the sea, not the law of the land, where God gave us dominion over the land. They've stolen God's right and put it all into the Vatican, and he believes himself to be God on earth, whereas the Jesuit Black Pope, who's now the Pope, which you're not supposed to be a Jesuit and the Pope, the last two popes have been Jesuits, they believe they're Satan on earth. And Vatican literally means divine serpent or serpent's house. If you go to the Vatican amphitheater where the Pope makes his speeches, he speaks from the mouth of the serpent.
Yes.
It's a big wall, and the Pope speaks from that. And if you look at
I wish I had that photo right now. I'd put it up.
Well, I have lots of photos and stuff if we ever want to delve into each of these
and that's
topics.
why I want to encourage people to go. I mean, the dumbest thing you can do as a podcaster or a broadcaster is tell somebody to go or listen to it and watch someone else. But I want you to see what Simone has done, because it's very powerful with a lot of photographic evidence.
And the Pope sits like he has a crown. If you ever look at his chair, under it is the burnt bones of the sacrificed children. That's what the Pope sits on. So you go to if you go, I know a lot of people have seen St. Peter's Square. It's not St. Peter from the Bible. It's St. Peter. It's the guy who Christ talked against, who's the founder, who was a warlock who founded and a carrier of the ancient magical arts that founded the Vatican. Peter Simon, not our Peter.
Bar Peter. Wasn't he Bar Peter something? Yes. Right, okay, you're right.
That's not our Peter. So when you go in the Vatican and you see the penis of Osiris, basically in order Christianity, just like the Muslim faith, was not spread by peace and love. They killed you if you didn't submit. They killed 100 million people.
Yes.
They killed 100 million people in Europe. Why do you think that our ancestors got on a boat with nothing and came to America? Right? People don't understand why everyone was leaving Europe, because this group of people had been in power for a long time and basically stolen everything they had. And that's what we're seeing the fallout of today.
People were not even allowed to have Bibles. If you were a Catholic, especially, you were not allowed to have a Bible.
Well, because the Bible, I went to Catholic school, okay? My grandmother to church.
Every mass was in Latin. People sitting there doing your little Catholic Olympics never even knew what the heck was being said.
Well, and that's why.
You were not allowed to read the Bible.
Did you go to Catholic school too?
No.
Oh.
But I study.
Mm-hmm.
I learn.
And the reason is because the Catholic Church wanted a one-unit. The word Catholic means universal in Latin. So when you see the universal church, when you see universal healthcare, when you see a universal index life insurance policy, it's a Vatican policy. They're telling you this is a Catholic financial instrument. They're telling you that's what Catholic, CATOLIC means. Yeah. So means universal. So that's why they want universal healthcare. That's why they want universal planet. That's why they want unity. right? It all has to do with submitting to the Pope as God on earth. And a lot of Catholics say, I don't worship the Pope as God on earth. I'm like, the fact that you're a Catholic, like I have to explain people's religion to them all the time.
It's so frustrating, isn't it? And I've had discussions with priests. I've had discussions with higher ups in the Catholic Church, reasoning scripture with them. And it's always come down to the very same thing at the end. They finally go, well, I guess we just have to agree to disagree. Because you're not going to come right out and say, yeah, Charlie, you're right. None of what we do and what we're requiring people to do are actually in God's word. This is all man-based. And they kept going back, well, it's tradition. Well, tradition sucks. You know who's had tradition? Pharisees. And Jesus spoke quite adamantly against them, called them whitewashed tombs full of dead men's bones, called them sons of Satan, called them a brood of vipers. That's who you're associated with right now with your tradition and your man-based crap that you peddle as Christianity. It's a cult. It's an extremely dangerous cult. And the people who I've had Christians would have these discussions coming back at me, attacking me. Well, I know a lot of Catholics who are good Christians. If they were actual good Christians, they would not be Catholic. You would not be aligning yourself with that and what they do. And what they stand for.
If you look at the Christian, what brought Christian is a tax classification in the Roman system. They couldn't figure out what to call because the Roman system is a taxation system where you are a slave. Jesus' message, a lot of people don't understand this. Eternal life, they consider us dead cargo in the system. Eternal life means we got our life back out of the Roman system. So they were trying to figure out how these Christians that had left the Roman system could get taxed. So they called them Christians.
And in Antioch, started in Antioch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people don't realize that the Muslim faith was started and funded by the Catholic Church. And you just have to, yes. So you can read the letters from the Pope to a nun in Chaldea. Muhammad was married to a Catholic nun. She financed all his wars and the murder of millions of people who wouldn't submit because still they were trying to get Jerusalem back. So you can see how they financed Muhammad, they paid his way, and what other church, it has the same exact structure. Women are nothing. The clerics have all the power, they own everything, and they control us under a feudal system. I have friends who are Muslims. I lived in Turkey. I've lived and worked in parts of Russia that there was a lot of Muslim people, and just like all other parts of the world. These people are really good, nice people. They don't understand the traditions they've been taught and what they truly mean. So it can be very disruptive. And sometimes I go through periods where like, do I really want to find out anymore? But I believe.
And by the way, you said they're good, nice people. They are until they're no longer in the minority. When they're in the majority and Sharia laws imposed on everybody, you'll be the first one they sell out.
Well, of course. And what I'm saying too is, I know a lot of Muslims and they hate religion. I mean, they are right. There are the ones that are coming over, but you know what? Our system usually beats them out. They may come over here with all that on their mind because they've been brainwashed their whole life. And they're like, wait a second, what was better? Right. And they meet other Christian people.
And I hope they realize that if they don't say anything and they don't stand up against the infiltration with the jihad going on everywhere all the time, the holy war, where they will not rest until the entire world is Islamic. And you'll either be enslaved if you don't turn into a Muslim actually, you will be enslaved or murdered. Period. Those are your choices.
And that's what the Catholics did for 300 years in Europe.
Good point.
Right. So
it's all very wicked.
System.
Now let me ask you this, because we got to go. We've been going a while, sister. And I got another guest coming up, but you're extraordinary. I'll have you on again and again. But,
I'd love to come into your studio because I'm through Sacramento every other week. So maybe it's better than me in my car because my house doesn't give good reception. So
perfect. I would love that. But let me ask you this. Donald Trump, when he, in his very first year in office, one of the very first things he did was went on a trip to Europe and including a visit to the Vatican And there's all kinds of things about what happened there when he was saying, here's what you're going to do. You're going to give this up. You're going to give that up. You're going to stop doing this. And I'm going to make sure you do. And here's what's happening. We're coming for you.
Yes.
Now, I've heard this again and again from several different people. I don't know how true it is, but why is he still walking around when anyone else who's ever talked about bringing these people down?
Okay, well, I think that there's different factions that are fighting this, right? So there's always the good side. We're always taught to focus that there's only bad people and everyone's bad. Every ruling family's bad. This is not true. People have been fighting evil, some family lines, just the family lines that are the dirty, evil ones, have children and grandchildren. So do the good people. So I believe that we're coming to a fruition. We've turned our brains off in the United States. We have funded tens of millions of murders and destruction of other countries for my entire adult life. We are going to have some comeuppance. It's not just all going to get better overnight. And the reality is we are in a war. We haven't started the war. I believe we've been in a war, that the Vatican was taken down during Christmas break, right after Trump went out of office. The Vatican was dark for 2 weeks. There was no lights on. There was no one there. Even the European news, they have all kinds of clips where they're showing the Pope giving his like Easter Sunday speech, and then he turns around and he just disappears. They're using
was that when they were saying he was sick?
Right. And then they've got the other guy who's an actor. The British newspapers and stuff, everybody's like, that's such and such actor. He played the Pope in many movies. They've got his bio. They've got everything. And they have always used body doubles and politicians and stuff. Do you think politicians really have time to go out?
Oh my goodness, Saddam Hussein had them everywhere. You're right. They do. They always got body doubles all over the place.
But I think that the Vatican is one structure system. What we have to be worried about is the counterpart structure system that they're putting in, right? These people became so visible. Are we really putting new people in, or are they just replacing them and distracting the attention off? But at the same time, you saw the Pope going down. The Saudi royal family crashed and burned. They skipped. One of my friends was actually an internal bodyguard for the wives of the Saudi royal family. They stopped coming to the United States. They canceled all their trips. 33 of them were in jail. Suspicious number, 33.
Because there was a hit out on one of them.
There was a hit out on quite a lot of them because they had to take care of their own business. Because apparently the Crown Prince is a big adrenochrome fanatic. And he had some concentration camps there because Saudi's well known for taking in workers from poor countries and then taking their passport and making them into slaves.
Muslim countries that have been the worst with slavery have kept it going. It's still going on now.
That's right.
But the adrenochrome, for anyone who doesn't happen to know, this is harvested from the adrenal glands of children who have been tortured and abused, and you get a bigger high depending on how afraid they were when you, or in pain they were when you murdered them.
Well, and a lot of times you'll see like
that's what this adrenochrome is. Not everybody knows that.
Okay, well,
go ahead.
Oh, I say you'll see the Rothschild events where they all put on these masks. Apparently the masks are to scare the children even more while they're doing that. And this stuff has been well documented in the World Criminal Court. And one of the royal family members had to step down.
Most of us don't know that stuff. We don't live in that world. And the NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt never tells us.
Well, literally one of the
probably doing it.
I can't remember if it was the Belgian or the Dutch royal had to step down because he had apparently had an illegitimate daughter from one of these human hunting parties they have. And he was forced to acknowledge her and he had to step down. So I believe there's a lot going on. We've had over 20,000 CEOs and heads of companies retire since Donald Trump came into office for no reason. They're not getting severance packages or anything. We've had world leaders. We've had a bunch of world leaders taken out. So I believe we're already in a war and that we have been in a war. And that's why I've kind of stepped forward. People ask me, why do I spend so much time doing this? It doesn't matter. It's history. I'm like, because I believe we're in a war now. And like you, Charlie, we're not doing it for money. Sure, if someone pays us to speak somewhere, something, that's great. But
fantastic. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah. But we have to realize that there's billions of us and there's only millions of them. And that's my message. Stop reacting to what they're telling you to react to.
And
Stop fighting with your family and not talking to your children because they don't agree with you politically.
Stop complying.
You're all owned by the same people. And they're having you fight with each other so you don't notice what they're doing. That's exactly what's going on.
Which is why they mask their big changes like this, going all digital currency crap, which will be complete and total control of everything we do financially.
Exactly.
We're seeing it in China. You want that? Do you want that, USA? Keep doing nothing. Keep not talking about it. Keep not even bothering to vote because my vote doesn't count. No, it counts. It's being used against you, especially in California.
And that's, I just wanted to say a few things too, if you don't mind.
We got 1 minute. So
okay.
I want to have you on again. How do we find you? How do we keep in touch with you? Any questions in the future?
Okay, so on June 6th and on June 20th at 8 a.m., I'll be on Agenda 21 Radio. I've been discussing the Uranium One deal. I was a mining executive for years and has worked in the mining industry around the world. Wow. So I'll be following up on that. You could get our previous shows if you want a little background. He's got them all set up. I'm organizing an event, helping organize an event at the Carson City Nugget on September 7th. We'll have Sam Sorbo, who's a Christian writer, and her topic will be family matters. And my show on Rumble is Lost in Translation, one word. And my YouTube channel is Lost in Translation. We explore history so you can understand what's happening to mankind today.
You're fantastic.
All right.
Simone Anderson, you really are. You're so fantastic. It's
all right. Well, I hope I didn't jump around too much.
No, you were wonderful.
Okay.
And we'll do it again real soon. I have a feeling you and I could probably do a good 3.5 hour show if we wanted to.
Okay, and then I have just 2 books.
Not that anyone would keep watching, but
okay. Let's call a book by David Rogers Webb. It's called The Taking. It explains how the Federal Reserve has hypothecated and stolen everything we have, including our homes. And then there's another video called 97% Owned. And that talks about who creates the money and why they keep doing these housing bubbles. This is about 4 or 5 hours of research, but your life will be different after you listen to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I am Charlee Simons. This is Do Not Talk. Please subscribe. Please follow on Rumble right here. Follow this channel, would you please, right now? If you like it, you help us get monetized. Maybe I could actually make some money off doing this. That'd be awesome. Otherwise, I'm going to keep doing it anyway, because where else are you going to meet people like Simone Anderson and get to hear her? It's important. Please let people know about what I'm doing here on Do Not Talk. Please share this. And may God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. Most importantly, though, America, bless God.